I am back. This is the first episode of the new year. And of course, what better guest to bring on than my buddy Dan Aquino?
Yep.
What I wanted to talk about, because I didn't get to really talk about the OG Anunoby trade on my pod. I reacted to it. I knew we texted when it happened. I know you were not a fan of it initially. Do you have an updated reaction?
I do. I do. I'm now
Let's
0
hear
for
it.
2 for this stuff. I wasn't a big fan of the Josh Hart trade last season. But that seemingly
Wow,
worked.
I didn't know that.
I wasn't. I really wasn't. I
You
just
were not a
wasn't that high
fan.
on Josh Hart as a player.
I bet that
And,
changed.
and and there's Knicks fans that still aren't. But I've come around to Josh Hart. I think what he provides is something we really need. But OG Anunoby, um, what he's done for this offense has exceeded my expectations. He is he brings a lot of the same stuff RJ Barrett does, but he does it a lot more efficiently, and he's comfortable being able to just camp out in the corner and be a shooter. And the big difference is the defense. We finally have a guy. Grimes was kind of our guy for that last season. But since he's now on the bench and he's really just a guard, we have now a wing defender that we could throw at the opposing team's best player. Some of the bigger forwards, star players of the league. We have a guy for that now. And that's something we haven't had the past few seasons, and something that was sorely needed. So that has worked wonders. And then offensively, he's spaced the floor out more. Brunson and Randall have been able to just cook, whoever it may be, and just play freely and not be so tight and crowded, which what was happening with RJ Barrett because he wasn't a reliable shooter. He's been shooting well in Toronto, go figure, but he wasn't as big as a reliable shooter, and he needed the ball also to really produce. OG Anunoby doesn't need that. OG Anunoby doesn't have to have 15 to 20 points a night to have an impact on the game. And actually, I have some of the lineups right here. Our two top lineups of the season has been with OG Anunoby, and he's been here, what, 3 weeks? So top lineup is OG Anunoby, Jalen Brunson, Hartenstein, who's done really well in the absence of Mitchell Robinson, Josh Hart, and Julius Randle. That is our best lineup of the season. They played 41 minutes together. Their net is a plus 59 and a half. And then the second best lineup also has OG Anunoby, and it's with Quentin Grimes, Jalen Brunson, Hartenstein, and Hart. So our two best lineups of the season has Josh Hart and OG Anunoby, our two trade deadline acquisitions. So I give all the credit to Leon Rose. I was stupid. These guys help us win. And it's proven wonders for the team so far, as we're on pace, I think, to win about 48, 49 games, which is going to be really good.
I don't think you were stupid. I think you were anticipating Donovan Mitchell, something like that, and RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickly were the two pieces in Donovan Mitchell trade. You're probably thinking, well, I saw somebody say, I don't know who it was, but somebody said they were really upset with Leon Rose because, like, oh my God, you didn't give up RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickly for Donovan Mitchell, but you will for OG Anunoby.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is the difference was the picks. Like, Danny Ainge was going to be asking for a ton of first round picks. That's why
He
the
wanted,
Knicks said
I think he wanted
no.
5. He wanted
Yeah.
5.
That's why the Knicks said no. That's not because they didn't want to give up RJ Barrett or Emmanuel Quickly. It's because they didn't want to give up. They didn't believe Mitchell was worth 5 first round picks plus those guys. And they were right. And they were smart not to do that, especially as they beat them. So,
Yeah.
and the backcourt, the size has been talked about a million times. Knicks fans still think they're getting Donovan Mitchell. We talked about it on your pod. I think it's almost impossible that they get Donovan Mitchell because they have nothing to trade that makes sense for both sides to make that happen. And I think the Knicks see bigger players. I think Donovan Mitchell is not their number one. You hear Stephen A talk about Donovan Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell's like, that's not on their radar, in my opinion. And to me, it's clear if you're just judging by their actions, they traded for OG Anunoby because they believe Anunoby's a better fit for what they got going right now and for whatever they could bring in the future. OG Anunoby's a guy that can start everywhere. He could
Yeah.
be a starter on a championship team, pretty much, not pretty much, definitely everywhere because he defends, he spaces the floor, he does his job. And I think what Knicks fans were not anticipating was that this trade was less a stat thing because if you look at OG Anunoby's stats, you're like, oh, what's so crazy about it? Well, we obviously know he plays defense. Well, he doesn't just play defense. He's like a top 3 perimeter defender in the league, so that's really important.
Mhm.
And number 2, especially for Tom Thibodeau, like he's
Yeah.
going to get the best out of a guy like that. And number 2, he could shoot the ball, catch and shoot wise. He can definitely hit a perimeter shot and it opens up the floor. This was the biggest thing, was opening up the floor for Randall and Brunson. And Randall and Brunson have played really well since this trade, especially Jalen Brunson.
Yeah.
And Emmanuel Quickly, I know Knicks fans loved him. They like the bench scoring, it's crazy. Well, listen, the bench scoring is important, don't get me wrong, but Emmanuel Quickly has sucked in every playoff series he's played it. Now, granted, that hasn't been many, and Randall hasn't been great either. At least Randall has the excuse of being hurt in the second one. But Quickly, smaller guard, not a great defender, coming off the bench. Obviously, bench scoring is important, but considering Thibodeau plays Jalen Brunson like 42 minutes a night,
Exactly.
especially in the playoffs, how valuable is Quickly really? And they knew they weren't going to pay that money for him, so might as well put him in an OG Anunoby trade. And because of that, they didn't have to give up one first round pick. They have all their firsts, so they can move Mitchell Robinson and a bunch of firsts and whoever they need else in that deal. Maybe Randall, who knows? Maybe not even Randall. For someone like a Joel Embiid, which you and I have talked about. And, that's that level of player. They have the ability to make a package like that. And that's what's worth it, in my opinion. But you've watched more Knicks games than I do. What do you sense is like the biggest thing that they need? Because I think we both can acknowledge that this team may be a top 4 team in the East at their best, maybe
Mhm.
a second round team, maybe even if they get the right opponent, they can make the conference finals. But what gets them to having the best possible chance at winning with the current group that they have?
I think so. The Anunoby trade, in trading Barrett and Quickly, you create a vacuum in your bench because basically all of our bench scoring, a lot of it came from Quickly. And then we'd also run units where it was a bench lineup with RJ Barrett. And it would allow him to just, be on ball and kind of run run the lineup, run the offense. You remove that. Now we're relying on Deuce McBride, who they just re-signed to an extension. We're relying on Quentin Grimes, Precious Achua, who we also got in that trade. You're
Mhm.
relying on, guys that are just not, reliable options to run an offense. Deuce McBride, his 3-point shot has improved. He's a great defender, uh, hard nose, brings energy, but he's not a great point guard in terms of running the offense. And I know JJ Redick thinks traditional point guards don't exist anymore, but you still need someone that can play make and, run your offense. So that is a problem. And that's what we're going to be looking for as we come closer to the trade deadline. Some of these guards that are coming available, maybe a Spencer Dinwiddie. I've heard Bruce Brown, people say about that. Dejounte Murray obviously has come up because people want another star caliber player. I don't think we go in for Dejounte Murray. It doesn't make sense. I don't think we can provide the best offer, but I'm sure we'll discuss that maybe a little later. But that's the number one thing. We need someone off the bench that can score and provide offense because right now, I don't know if you saw, we played the Wizards on Thursday night, and it took a 40-point game from Brunson. All the starters almost played 40 minutes, and that's not, sustainable throughout the regular season, especially that was on the second night of back to back. We want our guys healthy for the playoffs because I think this team has a chance to really make a nice playoff run. Maybe not the finals, but I think just like you said, depending on matchup, I think we can make the conference finals. That's how good this team is, how good they are playing on both ends of the floor. We're one of the best rebounding teams in the league, and that's really, really important, in tight games securing defensive and offensive rebounds. But that's the one thing. We need someone off the bench, and it's going to have to come at this trade deadline most likely.
I think this year, in a lot of ways, is an evaluation year still for the Knicks to see how they compare. Really, every year kind of is an evaluation year when you think about it. But like considering how they made the second round last year, they proved that they were a better team than Cleveland. This year, they got off to a shaky start. They haven't been able to beat good teams, but they beat the teams that they're supposed to beat, which is what you need to do. Good teams do that, right?
Yeah.
However, they've competed well against the Bucks. They've competed well against the Celtics and the Sixers. They blew them out not too long ago, right?
Yeah.
That was I think OG's maybe second game, maybe second or third game, something like that. It was really early on, I think, in
Yeah.
the
It
OG
was,
and OB
I
trade.
think, like January 5th. So it might have been the
Yeah, it was
third
early.
game. Yeah.
But I remember that was the game where, like, I think even haters of the trade started to be open their eyes, even though they beat Minnesota, which was a very
Right.
impressive win
Yeah.
too. So, but Philly, same conference, I think that took a lot of people by surprise that they blew out Philly like that. And I've been on the record about Philly. I've seen Joel Embiid dominate the regular season year
Yeah.
in, year
Mhm.
out, and then they lose in the second round of the playoffs, mainly because of an injury that he has. I'm not saying it's his fault, but he usually is injured and they need other guys to step up and they usually don't. Maybe that changes this year. I still think Philly isn't talented enough to keep up with some of the bigger teams. So if I'm a Knick fan, I'm thinking like, why can't we beat Philly? Why can't we have a chance versus Milwaukee? Why can't we have a chance versus Boston? Boston doesn't have amazing coaching. Like Milwaukee certainly doesn't have amazing coaching. So I look at it that way. I also look at how Milwaukee struggles defensively. That's a huge issue. And I think Brunson can absolutely dominate a Milwaukee Bucks series. Dominate.
100%.
So it's all going to come down to Randall because we know
Mhm.
Brunson's going to show up. We
That's
know
what it
Gina
is.
Anunoby's going to show up. If Julius Randle does not have a good playoffs, and I've been on the record, I don't think his game is really fitted for the playoffs and scouting. Now, last year I think was unfair to be so hard on him because they did go pretty far, and for any expectation that we had of them, and they were competitive versus Miami,
Yeah.
and he played hurt. So I'm not going to rip him too much, but Randall has a real shot. Like, this is a make or break year for him. If he does not play well for the Knicks this year, I think his future is in major jeopardy with the franchise. But if he does play well, then it's a different story.
Yeah.
But I just want to throw out two names to you. One name I'm going to bring out first, mainly because I don't know if he'll be available anymore, is Jordan Clarkson. I thought he was going to be available
Mm.
through trade. Now I'm not sure because Utah's winning. But
Yeah.
I think the number one fit for the Knicks would be somebody like Malcolm Brogdon.
Right. Yes.
Backup guard, can score well, can do everything you need. I don't know if he'll be happy about his playing time under Thibodeau, but he's a smart basketball player. I would imagine he would play. And to me, I don't think it would be too hard to get that done. Maybe a protected first and a second, because you guys have all these protected first. Maybe you need a real first. Maybe it's two protected first to get him. But I think getting him would be great. And I think he's someone you could keep with your team for a long time. To me, he's a championship level player. So if you're making another trade for like a 1A type guy, having Malcolm Brogdon on the roster doesn't hurt you at all. So to me, he's the premier guy. What do you think about him?
I I'm a big fan of Malcolm Brogdon. I'm mad he took the Six Man of the Year award away from me quickly, but that is a media issue because all of a sudden starting games is a problem when you're Six Man of the Year, even though that's never been a problem before. But I digress. Um, Malcolm Brogdon, yeah, I actually forgot about him. That's been something I've heard a lot of with Knick fans. I think that's a very likely thing they could get done. I think it would be not difficult of a trade to get done. They are shopping Quentin Grimes. Maybe they send Quentin Grimes in a pick, and that's enough for Portland to bite and send Malcolm Brogdon out. Brogdon obviously is not part of their future. They got Simons, they got Scoot. They want that to be their starting backcourt of the future. So Brogdon's kind of just there. You know, they got him in the Boston deal. It was surprising actually that Boston traded him because he had such a great season, and I thought he was really good off the bench for them.
He was unhappy
Well, yeah,
because he was originally in that Porzingis deal,
right,
and
and
he was
that
upset
deal
about
fell
that.
through.
Yeah.
Yeah, so once you sour that, I guess that makes sense. But yeah, I think that is a trade I would really like for the Knicks to get done. Someone that can defend a little bit, great playmaker, can score. I think he had 30 against the Pacers the other night in Pascal Siakam's first game. So he is someone that would really bolster this bench and I think would really bring things together and that would really make us even better.
He kills my team, the Brooklyn Nets. Considering that it didn't take a lot for Boston to get him. Why would it take a lot for the Knicks to get him? He's a seamless fit.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I think complete no-brainer. I think if we're thinking of Malcolm Brogdon teams, I think he probably fits best there because he could be very useful there. Um, but yeah, as far as the Knicks go, I think they have to be taken seriously. I think Anunoby opens things up, and I think Barrett, just to talk about him real quick, he's obviously playing well in Toronto. Good for him. He probably has more freedom to do certain things. But Knicks fans were very protective of RJ Barrett. I think some were,
Yeah.
right? They
Yeah.
wanted him to be good because and not just good for them
Hmm.
because he came at a very sensitive time for the franchise. You guys missed out on Durant and Irving. They went to Brooklyn. You didn't get Zion and you didn't get Ja. And so it was a very sensitive time. And you know what? If you would have told Knicks fans in 2019, hey, this guy is not going to be that great. He's gonna play for your team for what, 5 years?
Yeah,
Not
this is
even?
this is fifth season now, so
Yeah, so not
four and a
even,
half.
yeah, not even 5 years. And you guys are gonna make the playoffs twice and be better off without him. I think Knicks fans would have been like, what? You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Like, I mean, I'll take it, but that's not what I was expecting. But that's what's happened. And I think it's a testament to the front office and what they've done afterwards. But Barrett just wasn't a great fit with what they did. And
Wasn't.
it's clear 100% after OG there because OG just spaces the floor. Barrett needs more space to maneuver, and him clashing with Randall and Brunson just wasn't going to be it for them. It allows Brunson and Randall to be free. If the Knicks played at their best last year when Barrett was shooting the ball well because it opened up the floor for everybody.
Yeah.
And I think I think it's good that he's in Toronto. He's in his home in Canada. So that's good for him. But I just wanted to move on to the Clippers and how
All
dominant
right.
they've
Yeah.
looked. And, they've, we talked about the Clippers when it
Yeah.
originally happened. You were not a fan of the James Harden trade. I'm not gonna act like I was in love with the deal. I was just personally saying that I think Harden is good for regular season stability and he doesn't make them worse. And I think since they were kind of stale at the moment, going in for James Harden was kind of like, hey, what do you got to lose? I don't think this current thing is working. But clearly it upped their ceiling. I think now we can say. Um, but I wanted to talk specifically about load management with the Clippers
Mhm.
because clearly it's a whole bunch of crap because my team tried to do it a few weeks ago
Right.
and it has severely just completely crushed their season. Morale, trust in the organization. They rested one game, a game where they charged $127 as the cheapest ticket for Brooklyn Nets fans to come in,
Hmm.
and nobody played. And well, they started Mikal Bridges to keep his streak, and then they sat him after. And they didn't play Cam Thomas either. They didn't play anybody
Yeah.
for rest. Meanwhile, the Clippers don't rest their guys anymore, and Kawhi Leonard's been healthy. Paul George has been healthy. Harden's been healthy. Everyone's been healthy. And you know what? The Clippers finally have a year of continuity. And look how they're playing. What is your reaction to the Clippers?
Yeah, the Clippers have figured it out. It looked really rough those first 6 games. I think a big key was, unfortunately, they had to decrease Russell Westbrook's minutes. He doesn't play a whole lot with the big three of Harden, Kawhi, and Paul George. He plays with one or two of the other. That has been a big thing. Unfortunately, he just doesn't fit the other three, and that was a problem in the beginning, having them all four together on the floor. So now that you've kind of separated them, Ty Lue being a great coach that he is, he's found the combinations that work really well. And like you mentioned, Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, they're playing every game, back to backs, 3 and 4 nights, whatever it may be. They're playing. And when you're playing together constantly, you build continuity. They went on that huge win streak. Right after they started the first 6 games, didn't win any. They went on a huge win streak, climbed up the standings. They're now among the elite in the West. I think load management, I don't know how we got so lost in it. It doesn't make sense that if you're constantly sitting guys out, that you're going to be a great team. And that was their problem the last couple seasons, this whole tenure with Kawhi Leonard, is that, Toronto won a championship kind of load managing Kawhi a little bit, having him rest here and there. I think he played like 60 or so games that season. They came in with that same mindset because he was so injury prone and dealing with so many injuries that they said, all right, you and Paul George, we're going to rest you here and there. We're going to kind of coast through the regular season. And then they got to the playoffs and thought it would work, and it didn't. Because the regular season matters, the process matters. You need to build your process so that in the playoffs, when stuff gets hard, you know what to do, where to go to, how you're gonna run things. So this Clipper team, this is probably the most optimistic I've been about the Clippers in this whole Kawhi Leonard tenure. I think they can compete with Denver, with Oklahoma City, with Minnesota. They're finally a team that you look at and say, you know what? This team, if they stay healthy, they can win a title. Because James Harden just makes everything so much easier for Kawhi and Paul George. This is probably the best season Paul George has had as a Clipper. Probably his best season since Oklahoma City. That season was obviously a lot better, but he's been on the floor. They both have. Kawhi is proving he's still an elite star in this league. Not so much on the defensive end anymore, even though he still has moments, but offensively can still score without any one of them. And this is a team that finally, we're coming to the end of this and looking like, man, is this going to be over after this season? They make that trade, they take the gamble, and it seemingly has worked out so far.
I think people's concerns with the Clippers are I'm gonna say a few things. Number one, they're the Clippers.
Yeah,
So,
that means something.
apparently, yeah. But my thing is, if this team wasn't the Clippers, if you just took the guys on the team and you saw the record, saw how well they're playing, you would say to yourself, this is a team that looks like they can win a championship. If you didn't know they were called the Clippers, you didn't know the history,
Right.
that's what you would say. So I'm going to say that. Number two, James Harden's performance in the playoffs. Here's my retort to it. Harden is playing with two guys that can take over games. And you know what? Maybe Harden's so bad, like maybe Westbrook can come in and he can honestly take over a game. But
Mhm.
Kawhi and Paul George, that's why I was so like I'm kind of emotional about it. But like I think it's a big reason he didn't win in Philly. Philly needed to count on James Harden. Like Harden had to
Yeah.
play well for them to win. Harden didn't really have to play great in Brooklyn to win because he had Kyrie and Durant on his side. It's like, all right, shots not falling. All right, let's kick it to Kyrie. He'll do something. KD, let's do something, right? If he's not playing well with the Clippers, okay. Kawhi, you've won a championship. You're better than me here. Paul George, you're also really good, and you've taken this Clipper team to the conference finals. You're also really good. So I think Paul George is a little overrated, but he's having a good season. But the thing is, that's a very big piece. I think people are saying, like, well, let's see them in the playoffs, let's see Harden in the playoffs. I don't think Harden necessarily has to do all that much to win with the Clippers because he's got Kawhi and Paul George. And the last thing is health. Like they've been
Right.
healthy,
Of course.
which is great. However, they have injury histories, all of them at this point. Harden used to be the most durable person ever, and of course he goes to Brooklyn and he's not durable anymore. He goes to Philly. He has moments there. It's all in their history. So that's a huge concern. But they got the coach. You don't look at them as like, oh, they got bad coaching. I think they're going for it too. I think they're gonna try and make moves. I think Zach Lowe said Maybe they'll check in on the Nets for a role player like Dorian Finney-Smith. Maybe they'll do something else with whatever remaining picks that they do have. But as far as the Clippers go, like I think you're right. Denver Nuggets, OKC Thunder, Minnesota Timberwolves. I mean, Timberwolves and the Thunder, they haven't done anything yet.
Right.
Denver's the one that's done something. And, there's times this year where I'm like, Denver's amazing, and Denver may be just going through the motions.
Yeah. I felt the same way. I've seen some games where it's just like, it doesn't look like, but that could just be, an idea of, we won the title last year. We know we're gonna be there in the playoffs, because they're gonna be a top 3 seed. I don't think they're gonna fall out of that.
Mhm.
So that could be just that. I've seen jokes, Jamal Murray doesn't even show up to really play. When they play like the regular teams, or when they played Boston, he had like 30. So like when you have guys like that, can raise their level of performance when it matters, when you need it most. That's probably why, some nights they just don't look like they care. And that's just, a product of winning the title last year. In convincing fashion. They weren't really pushed
Mhm.
too much in the playoffs.
Well, the next team wishes that they could still compete for championships. The Golden State Warriors.
Yep.
I believe they're now 18 and 22, something like that. Now,
Yeah.
Draymond is back.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what's the problem with this team, man? They are a absolute mess. It seems like. I feel bad for Mike Dunleavy because he's like, "Wow, I'm finally an
Yeah.
executive,"
Mm-hmm.
and Bob Myers knew what he was leaving. He
Yeah.
knew like this team's hopeless. I think once Bob Myers left, I was like, that's pretty alarming.
It was.
I
Yeah. It
don't
was a
think he wanted to be the guy that let go of Klay Thompson, let go of Draymond, maybe let go of even Steph, you know. We've talked about the Warriors this year. I've said that they should continue to compete as long as they have Steph Curry. You find a way to make it work with Steph Curry. I think some people are questioning his future. I could see anything being possible, but Steph, I think it should be Golden State's goal to keep him a Warrior for as long as possible. But Steph's still great, and he wants to win championship. It'd be one thing if Steph was like, eh, but
right.
he's
Yeah.
not. He's still great. And my question to you is, this actually feels over, but do they have any value on their roster that any team would want?
I think they do. Um, I think despite the season Andrew Wiggins has had, I think there are some teams that would still take a chance on him. Um, Given just the track record, what he was able to do that season where they went to the finals and won. At times was their second best player. It's one of the more puzzling things this season, Andrew Wiggins not having anywhere near the type of seasons he's had, even in Minnesota. I mean, he's averaging 11 points per game. I mean, and they've relegated him to the bench. It's just crazy that he would have such a 180 turn from the seasons he's had previously with the Warriors. I think Kuminga has value around the league. I think people see the talent there and just acknowledge that for whatever reason, Steve Kerr is just not putting it to use the best way. Whatever it is, the relationship there, I think maybe isn't great. That is a problem.
I think they want
Uh,
to keep him though, right? Didn't I see that
they
they want to keep him?
who knows?
He doesn't want to stay.
No, he doesn't.
But I thought I saw that. But go ahead.
Yeah, he's had a good season. It makes sense to keep him. He's one of your young players that you drafted. But if he's unhappy, clearly, with the type of numbers that he's getting, with the minutes that he's getting, I think there is some value on this roster. I think Draymond Green, for some teams, they could probably find a way to integrate him. The problem with him is that he's a complete loose cannon. You have no idea what he's going to do on a night. He could punch somebody, he can choke somebody. And, we hope now that he took this 12 games off that he's automatically going to be better and he's not going to do stuff anymore. But the problem is that this team just doesn't have it anymore. They just don't have what it takes. The roster isn't good enough. The guys that they've, put their faith into, maybe the youth movement, they did not treat their draft picks very well. Like they didn't put a lot of um, effort towards, scouting to really get good guys. Podsmensky is good, if I said his name correctly. He's been really good. Trace Jackson Davis, that's a gem that they found. But overall, You look at that draft where they took Wiseman. That was a flop, a big flop. You could have got LaMelo, and I understand that would have been a weird fit with Curry, but Curry's an off-ball player nowadays anyway. He's not
You
running
could have,
pick.
yeah. Sorry,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you could have made with LaMelo, you could have tried to because you knew he could play. So you
Right.
like, all right, let's do this for 1 year in the moment, and if someone comes available, we can send him in a trade that would get another star or something. It shouldn't matter when you're that bad. It shouldn't matter for fit. Draft the best
Exactly.
guy available.
100%. You draft the best guy available. I hate the notion like, oh, why would you draft him? He does not going to fit. What does it matter? You're bad. Get
Yeah.
whatever the best talent you can.
I
And
think
even
Golden State was in a weird position because they were still like they knew they were better than what they were. They just
right,
got guys
yeah,
out, so they were like,
100%.
"We need a big and blah blah blah." But Wiseman was clearly not it. But yeah,
Yeah. Chris Paul's already hurt. Broke his hand. He'll be back at some
shocker.
point. Yeah, he went into to get a strip and he broke his hand. It's
Now
it's
you can't. Now you can't trade him.
yeah. So they're kind of left with very little they can do. I think you got to swallow the hard pill, and that's what Clay is not the player he used to be. He has to be moved. You're not going to pay him in this summer. He's going to want a lot of money. You cannot give him that contract. It's going to tank the next few seasons. And like you said, as with Steph Curry still playing at this level, his play style is going to allow him to continue to be good into older age. You have to try and win. I think you owe that to Steph Curry. I mean, they've done a lot for him, obviously. They've had this long decade run of being a contending team, but you shouldn't, now just you say, oh, we won those titles. It's kind of over. If it's over, then you got to trade Steph Curry too. They'll
Well,
never do it unless he asks for it because
exactly,
that's
exactly.
crazy. But going
Before
future,
we
yeah,
get there,
yeah,
I think they should with Clay. I don't think they're gonna trade. I don't think they're gonna trade Clay. I still don't think
that's
they're gonna trade
that's
Clay.
crazy.
You know what's crazy too? Is I don't know if anybody really wants him at the money he's gonna want.
Yeah.
Who's gonna pay Clay? Maybe Detroit. Who's
they,
gonna
they
want
got money.
Clay Thompson at the money he wants?
I don't
So
think anybody would.
maybe it's a situation where Golden State's like, all right, go to free agency, see what you can get, and we'll see. Maybe we'll bring you back. Maybe we won't. You know,
He ends up coming back on a cheaper deal. I could definitely see it.
maybe. I mean,
Yeah.
because I don't think anybody else would want him. Andrew Wiggins, I think his next stop needs to be with a team with great spacing, a good coach, a superstar point guard. Oh wait, no, he's already done that
Hmm.
in Golden State. So I am you know me, man. I've been off on Wiggins. Like I just think he's hopeless personally. It just seems like whatever's gone on with him. Now you could tell me the vibes of the team are completely different, but that team's got a good coach. They have spacing. They have a superstar point guard. Why is Andrew Wiggins struggling as bad as he is?
Yeah, it does make sense.
Doesn't make any sense. It's not like Jordan Poole, where Poole clearly had beef with a player on the team.
Hmm.
Wiggins doesn't have beef with anybody on the team. He's just a bad player right now. So it's very strange to me. And I think if you put him on a team that's trying to win games, you'd be concerned about bringing in Wiggins.
Yeah.
Um, as far as they go after that, they're not big enough. I still think they should try to win this year. But yeah, I mean, they need size.
That's been apparent for like the past like 2 seasons. They need
Yeah.
size.
I think they need to explore everybody on the roster for trade. And listen, they could find a good trade for Clay Thompson. It's probably for the good of the organization that you do that.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, that's really all I wanted to say. I think it's over. And if it's over with, I think it's over as far as them winning championships right now.
Yeah.
But as long as Steph is on the roster, you got to try and maximize anything because he's a guy that can be the best player on a championship team. So you got to fix whatever's going on around there with that.
Hmm.
So yeah. Lastly, we got a few minutes. I wanted to talk quickly about Dejounte Murray. He's obviously in trade rumors. We saw the Siakam trade. We talked about the Siakam trade a lot on your channel. We also did talk about Dejounte Murray. But for my purposes, my team, the Brooklyn
Yeah.
Nets,
Hmm.
it seems like are the team that makes most sense for Dejounte Murray, and yet no one's really talking about him. I think most people think he's going to the Lakers. Miami is one that people think is good for him. He had that cryptic Instagram story post where he just posted the Miami Heat jerseys.
Yeah.
So, Atlanta was in Miami to play. I don't know what that means. Maybe he wants to go. I think he'd be a great fit in Miami. I just don't think Miami would make the trade. I think Miami, here's what I do know. I know Miami wants him and they want people to know that they want him, but they will not trade for him.
They'll just be like,
That's
we tried,
yeah.
we did our thing because they
What do
somehow
you
ended up
think?
not with Lillard.
Just quickly, what do you think of the Dejounte Murray suitors? And specifically, if he were to be traded, what's the best fit? Do you think the Nets are the best fit? You tell me.
Yeah, the three big suitors, obviously the Lakers, the Knicks, and the Nets. I think the one getting the most noise, obviously, is the Lakers because they're the Lakers. But I think the best fit would be in Brooklyn. I think you have a team that fits, that he fits more. You have those wing players, whether you keep them or not after the trade deadline, because a lot of them are going to be free agents. But you upgrade at point guard, you allow him to be the main ball handler. He can run the offense and be fully utilized as a better player. He has a reputation of being a two-way player, whether that's still true or not.
Yeah,
It's kind
but
of, jury's out.
we didn't really talk about that on your pod. I think a big reason why his defense is bad in Atlanta is obviously him, but also the personnel and the fact that he probably guards bigger dudes now. I think he's used to in San Antonio, who was guarding point guards,
Yeah.
and now he doesn't do that as much. Um,
Yeah. I
I
mean, they don't.
think
Atlanta doesn't have anybody really that plays defense. So best
exactly.
player he's got to guard just isn't
So I'm
happening.
gonna hold. He's definitely not the defender he was in San Antonio.
Mm-hmm.
And not the ideal fit with Trae Young, like some pros of that trade wanted, right? But I think in a different situation, he could still be a really good defender.
Yeah. And I think with
Yeah.
the Lakers, I'm not sure they're gonna want to give up Austin Reeves and that 2029 first round pick for a roster that may not be salvageable given their situation right now. The Lakers are kind of a train wreck. I think Brooklyn, they have a idea of what they want to do for the future. They want to build around Michael Bridges. I know that sounds funny. You mentioned that on my podcast, but you want to put more talent, better talent around Michael Bridges, have him more in a second or third best player role, and that's will suit him the best. Because I don't think as a first option he is very comfortable, and he's not had a great season.
Mikal
Uh,
Bridges, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
Mikal Bridges.
Yeah. Nope. 100% agree. I just thought other people should hear it from a
Yeah,
Knick fan perspective than a Net fan. We talked about it on yours that we don't think Murray's a great fit with the Knicks. We feel like it's Atlanta 2.0 for them.
yeah, same thing.
Um, yeah. So yeah, I mean, like I said, DeJounte Murray opens the possibility of even maybe obviously being a better team this year. The Nets have been a drastic disaster. I blame it mostly on coaching. If you follow me in the past, I hate blaming coaches. Just quickly before I end this,
Yeah,
I actually think Jacques Vaughn might be worse than Steve Nash. And for the reasons of
yo, that's crazy.
Steve Nash we hated Steve Nash because he was terrible at defense, uh, building a defensive scheme. The team sucked defensively. Excuses, and they didn't move the ball. Well, under Jacques Vaughn, he did a great job last year, but he doesn't move the ball with a team without Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. He doesn't have a good defensive team, even though he has tremendous defensive players on the roster. And he benches his best scorer in Cam Thomas in the fourth quarter, which drives Nets fans absolutely insane. And I don't think Steve Nash would have done that personally, even though he didn't play a lot. Cam Thomas a lot back then. Cam Thomas was a rookie. It's okay. Now makes no sense to do that. But this is my quick little rant on him. Anyway, thanks for being on the first episode of the new year, Dan. We're going to have you on again and again and again to talk NBA stuff. Great having you again, man.
It's been a blast. Thanks, James.